Hey up everyone, this is a brief look around the paddock of a classic racing motorcycle club race meeting at Donnington Park. I don't have much detail about some of the specific bikes in certain cases where there is no one around to chat to, so I do talk more generally at times about the model or some particular engineering or design feature I noticed. In the middle of the video there are some seriously famous bikes, some that have rewritten history, so I will jump straight in. But try to remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy it. Before I had even got to the paddock, I came across some fantastic bikes. These three Velocettes looked like they had come straight from a showroom, and I will never understand how people keep their bikes so clean and tidy, even when they've obviously ridden there. They really were stunning examples of both the original engineering of the bikes and the people who have kept them going over the years. I think they were Venom Clubmans, but I'm not sure if any were Thruxtons or not. I'm not a Velocette expert, but they were beautiful bikes and a taste of what was to come. The BSA next to them looked quite interesting too. Again, this was just in the car park, and so there was no one to ask any questions about it at all. But it was another bike in showroom condition. Just inside the paddock was this fantastic Vincent. The racing had started, so the paddock was quite empty, and I just had to enjoy the feast of engineering delights on show. It really was a masterpiece, and had obviously been built by someone with the knowledge and passion to do it justice. Next in was a pair of Moto Guzzi Falcone Sports. If I say the first is the more original bike, you can see it is, but this is a race bike. Built from 1950 to 63, you can see the friction-damped suspension, which I will be honest and say I found fascinating in both its simplicity and complexity. Simple in terms of the principles involved, complicated in the way it was applied with the various linkages that had been built to get the most from it. I can honestly say I had never seen anything like it. Because the cylinder barrel pointed forwards on the 500 single, it made the engine very long. To keep it sensible, they made the crankshaft very compact and squeezed it in very close to the gearbox. As a result, there was very little flywheel mass. To compensate, they hung an external flywheel on the end of the crank. It may look crude, but it meant that the rest of the bike could sit very low in the chassis, giving it a smaller frontal area, lower centre of gravity and better aerodynamics. They were so successful in racing that even Norton tried to copy the design. It also made a great polisher if you put a sheepskin mop over the flywheel too. The second bike had been given the Colin Seeley treatment. The heavy central section of the chassis and the rear suspension had gone. Huge triangulations in the rail's 531 tubing give flex as well as torsional strength in a lightweight package. Colin Seeley was a master frame builder. He started as a motorcycle dealer who went into racing in the 50s, winning in Grand Prix in the 1960s before becoming a pioneering frame builder who supplied many racers, including the great Barry Sheene. Seeley built his first solo race frame for a matchless G50, but it was his use of Reynolds 531 tubing that was revolutionary. The frame weighed over 9 pounds less than Matchless's own, and after testing it, Derek Minter described it as the best steering solo motorcycle he had ever ridden. He went on to work with Norton on their rotary race bike and in Formula One, but motorcycles were his passion. The bike was a fantastic example of his masterful work. This Honda RC164 sounded unbelievable on track, and the thunderous exhaust sound had more in common with the MV Agustas of the day than the Hondas that had come before it. This was the period where Soichiro Honda threw everything into his efforts at beating the world's fastest motorcycles on track. To call it legendary would be an understatement, and the RC164 4-cylinder double overhead cam 250 would go on to spawn the mighty R6166 6-cylinder race bikes. The 250cc Honda won the title 5 times between 61 and 1967 in the hands of Jim Redman and Mike Harewood, and the world of racing would never be the same again. I failed to find anyone to talk to about these two MV Agustas, so I can't give you many details, unfortunately. The fully faired model was, I think, the earlier one, with straighter frame rails, whereas the naked triple had a frame that must have been a nightmare to build. The curved down tubes met a completely removable lower section that could be taken out to drop the engine quickly and easily. The eccentric swing arm adjuster is something I wouldn't expect to see until much later too. The whole bike is without doubt a piece of motorcycle art. From the phosphor bronze header clamps to the polished Boroni rims, this was a motorcycle built by the best engineers Italy had, from the best components they could find. Being able to see the one without its fairings was a real pleasure, and I have never seen such neat or comprehensive lock wiring before. It puts mine to shame. The history of the MV Agusta is a long and glorious one that made them unbeatable in the racing scene for many years. Both these bikes were great examples of why they succeeded. The engineering was just astonishing, and somehow, if ever any bikes were to be described as beyond words, these would be those bikes. Behind the MVs was a Moto Bianchi, designed by the great Lino Tonti before he began work for Moto Guzzi. This Bianchi is one of the 350cc World Championship winning 4-stroke twins from the early 60s. The build quality really was astounding, and I wish I had got better pictures. The 350 engine pushed out over 50 horsepower, and Tonti increased capacity to create a 500 twin that would create almost 70 horsepower. Tonti's reputation spread, and he joined Moto Guzzi in 1967, where he went on to design the now fabled V7 and the small block V50, two of Moto Guzzi's most iconic bikes. Now, this bike was one of my favourites of the meeting. I've already mentioned Colin Seeley, and this is another chrome moly masterpiece built by hand in Colin Seeley's workshop. This one was fitted with a 500cc Weslake twin, and although originally it used a 360-degree crank, this was changed to a 90-degree crank later. Harry Weslake was another master engineer and was the man who invented the concept of gas-flowing cylinder heads. He was best known for his 900cc twin-cam 8-valve Norton-based Weslake engines, but he reworked the heads of many British bikes. Weslake was involved in building cylinder heads for Jaguar, the Ford GT40, and even the Rolls-Royce Merlin aircraft engines. Interestingly, contrary to everyone else at the time, Weslake developed a crank with a 90-degree firing order. All the British bikes at the time were using a 360-degree firing order, while the Japanese moved to a 180-degree firing order to try and cut down on vibration. It did cut down on primary vibration, but unfortunately increased secondary vibration. The 90-degree firing order was used to decrease overall vibration, but also to improve the power profile of the engine. The result was a faster pickup and a more free-revving engine, with arguably a better natural balance than even the 270-degree cranks so often found in many modern parallel twin engines. What you may not know is that Harry Westlake's legacy lived on, and the engine tooling was all saved and even developed further by a man called Dave Nourish. Nourish racing engines were still being built when, unfortunately, in 2021 we lost another master. After the death of Dave Nourish, the company was continued, but without the master engineering skills passed on by Weslake and developed further by Dave Nourish, things would never be the same. What I did find out is that apparently after this meeting, this bike went on to take a second and third place in the Belgian Classic at a place called Gedeen last year. So it is still going strong, although there have been more changes since, it seems. It is great to know it's still being raced. This next one was a bike that just made me smile. Not flash or expensive compared to many in the paddock. It was a bit of a Frankenstein Honda based around a twin-cam 750 engine. I believe the donor bike was actually a factory custom Honda CB750, but there was no one around to ask about it. It just looked really well put together, and the final bike looked sleek and well balanced, unlike many of the bikes that have rolled off the various factory floors over the years. It really was definitely a credit to its builder. It would be one of my most endearing memories of the meeting. This Kawasaki Z1 based bike carries another hallowed name of the motorcycle world. Fritz Egli was a genius frame builder from Switzerland who took the fastest motorcycles ever built and made them better. The Egli Vincents had become known worldwide as the best of the best, but his creations used many different power plants. When the Z1 arrived in the early 70s, it gave Egli a highly tunable but strong engine to use. Lightweight and very stiff, the Egli chassis design was copied by many over the years, and after almost 9 years of searching, Egli eventually found someone to carry on the name when he retired. Sadly, recently in 2023, the Egli name was finally lost and the company closed, but his name will always be associated with the best frames possible for the fastest bikes available. Now here we have a very different Kawasaki. This two-stroke production race bike wasn't getting much attention because of the bikes around it, and I couldn't find anyone to tell me anything more. I was fascinated by the incredible front brake, which looked like a four-leading shoe arrangement, and the Barani rims are the same ones I use on my Laverda SF2. The front suspension had external springs with internal damping, so it must have been a very early Kawasaki racer. I do wish I'd have been able to find out more about it. This one is another Frankenstein bike, but I don't use that term as an insult, and I have no idea if Maxton designed the frame in-house or possibly collaborated with someone like Spondon Engineering. Regardless of who built it, the frame was a stunning piece of engineering. The huge triangulation down to the swing arm left the central area free to site the Maxton monoshock rear suspension in the perfect place, and the engine was an old air-cooled Yamaha twin, which I assume was either RD250 or 400. It would have been nice to find out more, but if I'd stopped to talk to every owner, I would only have got photos of about 6 bikes. These bikes were being run by a team of RAF engineers and riders, and were all in immaculate condition. The next bike will mean more to some than others. It's a Yamaha TZ750, but it was Dave Potter's bike. Dave Potter was a giant in the UK road racing scene. A quietly spoken Yorkshireman, he dominated the British Championship, winning the title twice, but he was never picked up by the works teams. Dave had moved to London to work at the Dunstall factory as an engineer and first won the British 750 title in 1972 on Agusta and Norton. Later, he would be picked up by the sponsor Ted Broad and given a Yamaha TZ750 to race. He went on to win the MCN Superbike titles in 1979 and 1980 and was always high up in the points table in his transatlantic trophy years. Among his other achievements were a 5th in the 1976 FIM Formula 750 Championship and a 4th at the 1975 Imola 200. But he just never got the breaks he should have. Even when Ted Broad and Mitsui joined forces to try and push the Yamaha UK team forward, they just couldn't compete with the full works team bikes. Sadly, on the 31st of August 1981, while leading a race at Donnington Park, Dave Potter lost the front at Cascades. He hit the Armaco hard and never recovered. He was being chased by Ron Aslam on the Works RC1000 Honda and Corky Ballington on a Kawasaki KR500 GP bike. Unfortunately, he died 17 days later in hospital from a brainstem injury. There is a fantastic interview with Corky Ballington in the video about the best sounding two-stroke road race bikes linked above. Works riders Gene Romero and Kenny Roberts tested the first production examples of the TZ750 in 1973, and as far as I'm aware, these are the first bikes that came in what became the signature yellow and black Yamaha speed block colours. Roberts was always the star, but it was Gene Romero who took the win at Daytona in 1975 when Roberts retired with mechanical problems. Romero was on the last of the twin-shock Yamaha TZ750s, while Roberts was given the new monoshock chassis. This was the very bike that Gene Romero won on at Daytona. Another bike with a history, this OW98 YZR 500 Yamaha GP bike, was the Sonato Yamaha ridden by the great Christian Sarron. Protégé of the equally great Patrick Pons, Sarron was a fantastic rider whose style influenced a whole generation of racers. Born in a small city called Clermont-Ferrand, on the side of an extinct volcano in central France, he grew up surrounded by racing. The roads in Clermont-Ferrand were used as a road racing circuit, once described as faster and twistier than the infamous Nürburgring, and having ridden in the area, I can attest that the roads there are the perfect training ground for any racer. This was a bike that took him to many of his wins, and it was in truly astonishing condition, a credit to his owners and a great memory for me. I really was running out of superlatives at this point. Now, many of you will already know I have a soft spot for Cagiva. I honestly wonder what would have happened to the European motorcycle industry without the Castiglione brothers, and in many ways this bike was the pinnacle of the Cagiva race department's achievements. After the success of the Cagiva Mito, they had set their sights on the 500cc title. With help from greats like Randy Mamola, the bike had grown from an exciting but dangerous animal to become a race winner with real potential. First John Kosinski and then Eddie Lawson took it on to new heights. This is the bike that Eddie Lawson rode in 1992 when he got Cagiva's first win at the Hungarian Grand Prix. An 80-degree V4, it produced about the same power as the Yamahas of the day, but was a bit down on power compared to the Suzuki and Honda. Full of innovations, it was a fast bike, but just had endless teething troubles as the new innovations were trialled throughout the season. Carbon fibre wheels, swing arm, bodywork and even clip-ons kept weight down to under 130 kilos on this 190-mile-an-hour projectile, but it had cost the company dearly. Lawson and Kosinski's contracts, along with years of development, had nearly bankrupted the small Italian firm, and in the end they even sold Ducati to try and stay afloat. The Grand Prix circus was just too expensive for this small company in the end, and with the ending of the two-stroke era, we lost them from the racing scene. Much of the technology went on to be used in the development of the MV Agusta brand, and this became the focus of the Castigliones, with the great Cagiva name eventually lost to the motorcycle world. Again here we have a bike I talked about in the Best Sounding Two Strokes video. The Proton KR3 was the brainchild of Kenny Roberts. He had decided to take on the Japanese in the 500cc class, and the KR3 was his baby. I believe this was Anthony Gobert's bike, but there was no one around to confirm that on the day. It must have been one of the last few made before the Modernus name began to be used. This was the newest of the two-strokes, and was the last two-stroke to race in the new MotoGP class. A new day had dawned, and the four-strokes would become the future of the Premier class. It marked the passing of an era. These two YZR 500s were again in immaculate condition. The Paget's bike was the bike Bruce Anstey rode to victory in the Classic TT in 2014. He led the race from start to finish, setting a then new lap record of 123.89 miles per hour over the 37-mile TT course. The same bike had been used during the 1991 MotoGP season by the factory team, but I will be honest and say I'm really not sure whose bike it originally was. The other bike, I'm not so sure about either. There were always going to be some I couldn't find out about. I will leave you with two more special bikes. I will call the first one a Honda SP 1.5. It was a bit of a hybrid between an SP1 and an SP2. It began life as an SP1, but had the swing arm and suspension from the SP2. But I honestly forgot what other bits were SP2. It reminded me of the great Joey Dunlop and the dominance he had shown in the senior TT during the years that the V-twin Honda was at its most potent. Lastly, this flying brick has to be one of the most trick bricks I've ever seen. The work on it was done so well it could have been a factory race bike. Built by BSK Speedworks around a BMW K100, it has gone on to take many wins and podium places in the classic racing calendar. I'll leave you with a few track shots, and you might see what looks like a Rob North Rocket 3 in there, as well as some less than clear pictures of the sidecars. The Y-fence at Donnington just messes with the camera, sorry. As always, thanks for watching, and thanks for all the support. I've said it before, I know, but please don't use the YouTube giving button. They take most of it, so there are much better ways to support the channel. There is a direct donations link, but why not take a look around the website? You'll find the best biker t-shirts in the shop, and we do plenty of custom work too. There are even more printed products in the Redbubble shop too. There are mugs, hats, wall art, sweatshirts, phone cases and more. Over 60 different products and hundreds of designs with great quality printing, delivered worldwide. Basically, if you can print on it, I can usually supply it somehow. Just drop me a line via the contact page on the website if you have any questions. I do try to put promo codes on the community page for discounts when I can too, so it's always worth checking in case there's a big discount on. The blog also has loads of articles about all sorts, from maintenance tricks to stories from ride-outs, track days and other adventures. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you got this far. Join the best motorcycle community on YouTube and hit the bell icon to be the first to see any new videos. Do subscribe to the backup channel linked below in the description too. I hope you all have a great week. Remember, keep your spanners close and your keys even closer. Ride free, everyone!